Hey guys, and welcome to the ABA or wherever I post it at this point. So like the title of the video says, we are going to go over how to write a proficient session note. So what I have realized lately is a lot of companies have either an input system where you are just inputting, you're answering questions, what behaviors occurred, how often the behaviors occurred. It's very layman's, and it's not very technical, because a lot of the times you can't take that session note method somewhere else. You may have to actually write out your session note. So we're going to go over a few things that are important to have in your session note. So important items have mentioned in your session notes are going to be the location that the session took place, whether it is at school, community, home. And when I say community, we want to state where in the community. If we are in a park, if we are in Target, if we're at the grocery store, if we are at Taekwondo, we want to specify, right? We don't have to necessarily include the time. That is time stamped when you arrive to session. A lot of the ABA companies now have it where you pretty much, you have to check in wherever you're at. You have to obtain a signature from an adult that is present. So you don't necessarily have to put the time in there. Again, you want to mention who is present at the session, right? So there has to be another stakeholder present at the session. This could be a parent, a teacher, a counselor, a Taekwondo coach, a swim coach. There has to be another stakeholder that is invested in us being there for the sole purpose of behavioral support. So you want to mention who is present upon your arrival. I just want to throw it in there that if you do have, well, you should have an adult present, you want to ensure that they are participating. If they are not participating, they need to be in visible sighting of the session. A lot of times, some parents may take it as an opportunity to take a nap, to rest, go run errands. That is not what we are there for. ABA has changed drastically over the years. We want the involvement of the stakeholders, the parents, the teachers, so that we can train them on how to better suit the client in the environment. Our goal is to work ourselves out of a job. And I'm going to say that a lot on a lot of our videos, because a lot of the times, our stakeholders become dependent on us. And unfortunately, if you're in my area, I'm in South Florida, the wait lists are very long and we have more kids to support and help. So then we also want to make sure we mention the client we are servicing, right? We want to make sure that, of course, you got to mention the client's name and what they're doing. For the purpose of this video, in compliance with ethics and HIPAA, we are going to use an alias name. So we're going to use SpongeBob during today's session notes, but we are going to include it. Now, I do want to add, if we do have a home session where there may be another client in that session due to it being a sibling, you also want to be mindful of utilizing their name in the session note as well. And I'll go more into details pertaining to that later on in the video. Then you also want to mention the health conditions, the environmental conditions, and the safety of the client, right? So if you arrive and the client appears sick, remember, we have mentalism, right? We have we now have radical behaviorism, where we now include thoughts and feelings. So if a child appears to be getting sick, their behavior may change. It may have some impact on the session. Environmental conditions. Is there, for example, you have a school session. Is there a substitute today? Is there changes in the schedule? You want to mention all that information in the session notes. And also the safety of the client. If you arrive to session and the client has any bruising, any bite marks, it doesn't have to be from a person. If it's from a mosquito or a bug, even if the caregivers didn't inform you of it, note it, note it, note it. I have gone into session where a child has had bruising from them itching from a bug bite over the weekend. I note it. Arrived to session, client had marking above their right knee that was dime size. I indicate it because that is your liability. I don't know if you have been in the field long enough when you are watching this video, but we have liability insurance, and the liability is protected as long as we protect ourselves. So make sure you include all that information in the session note. You also want to include when the next session is going to take place, right? So if you're seeing the client on Monday and then you don't see them again till Wednesday, you want to include that you're going to see them on next Wednesday. Another addition to the session notes, you also want to include the acquisitions. So what acquisition skills are you targeting, right? You want to ask yourself that. What target behaviors occurred during the session, right? And then during the session. And then you also want to make sure that while you are noting this information, if there are any new behaviors, is the occurrence of the behavior high enough for you to collect baseline? And baseline is when we have a new behavior. So for example, your client has started back school, you're noticing that they're mouthing. They've never mouthed on items before. Maybe it's happening 2-3 times throughout the day. You're just verbally or physically prompting them not to engage in such behavior, right? Is it enough for you to collect baseline? Probably not. But if this goes on for a couple weeks, now we may want to kind of revisit what is going on with the client. So let's dive right in and start writing our session note. So let's start it with met with SpongeBob at agreed upon location with caregiver at school. And then let's say the school name is called Bikini Bottom Elementary, right? So let's go ahead, capitalize, fix our grammar. At Bikini Bottom Elementary, perfect, right? So this is stating that you can even change it. So I met with SpongeBob at the agreed upon location with the caregiver at the school Bikini Bottom Elementary. Done. I've stated who I'm meeting and that this location was agreed upon with the caregiver. So whether the caregiver is present or not, they have agreed for us to hold school services in the school setting. Perfect. Now, upon arrival, met or I was greeted by Miss Krabs, right? Ugh, this grammar. Upon arrival, I was greeted by Miss Krabs. SpongeBob was engaged in standing on his chair, engaging in out of seat behavior, which poses a safety concern, right? However, there were no health concerns present during the arrival of session. So there we go. So we have target behavior, which I like to just put TB, so that when the analyst does go over the notes, they're able to see that this is one of the target behaviors that is part of the goal. You want to make sure that you let them know that you're incorporating the means, the rhymes and the means of the session into the you are implementing, and you're collecting data on the target behaviors, and by doing so, it's very clear, very concise. There's no confusion, right? So then you're gonna say, I approached the client and verbally prompted them to have a seat in their chair and asked them, what are we working on, right? So this client probably has the ability to respond to simple asks, one-step questions. So that's why it's within the client's repertoire for them to answer me, right? So we're asking them, what are we working on? So in a sense, we're redirecting the client, right? We're redirecting them. Then we can say worked on, or we can say during comprehension lesson, client was instructed by the teacher to engage in peer interaction regarding the high frequency words of the week and come up with examples. SpongeBob did well with asking his peer what environment being the frequency word. I don't know. Yeah, frequency word. That's what I meant to type in there. Word. Let's put this in parentheses, right? Would they like to live in, right? So now we have it where this is an acquisition, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put would they like to live in. I'm going to put that a question mark. I don't know why that's correcting it. I'm going to put AQ for acquisition because this is a functional communication opportunity where now I'm going to help the client, help the SpongeBob learn how to respond back to his client after they answer. So for example, peer, we don't want to use the peer's name, peer stated they would like to live in the cabins in the cold weather. Client began to stem in the manner of rocking back and forth in his seat and gazing away from his peer and indicate no response to peer. So the client didn't respond to the peer. So what did we do next? Did we just ignore? Did we just, carry on and not even just let it go? No. What we're gonna do is now we're gonna say client's attention was obtained with physical gesture, right? So this may be in the manner of tapping on his shoulders, and he was asked, what does he think about living in the cold weather, right? So say our client does respond, right? Our client says, SpongeBob states, brr, it's cold. Then you want to remind your client that you want to remind them, well, it's cold, right? You want to remind them that they're engaging in a conversation with their peer. This is not a standalone conversation. So then you're going to say, ask client, what environment did the peer state they want to live in, right? Because I'm asking him back the question, right? So I may at this point kind of intervene and ask the peer to ask my client back, or tell my client again what environment they want to live in, followed by a question, right? We don't want any latency between the question being asked while we have the attention of the client. Remember, we are there to manipulate the environment the best that we can, and meet the needs of our client, right? So we're not there to create a tantrum, especially when you're in the school setting. I don't have another video on just the manner in which we want to deliver services in the school setting. We want to be mindful, be very mindful of the environments that we're in, that we are in the setting of the teachers. We are to respect their classroom. We may not be able to implement all and everything on the plan, but we are there to reduce as many behaviors as possible. However, it is still our goal to get them through the session. So here, I'm just going to wrap this up. This is just one scenario that may have happened, during the session. And then we're always going to say at the end, we are scheduled to meet with the client on, say today's Monday, and we're going to meet with them again on Wednesday, and then we're going to put the date. So say the date is Wednesday, July 24th, 2024, for continuation of implementation of the behavioral plan set forth by the behavioral analyst. And that's it. So yes, this is a session note. If you're in an RBT, this is what we're going to want to make sure we include. Obviously, at the end, you're not going to want to put, set forth by the behavior analyst. If you are the behavior analyst, why would you put that? You're writing the note, right? So let's kind of go over it. So again, how to write a proficient session note. Ensure, and I'm going to highlight everything as we go through it. Ensure that I don't know why this did that. Okay, make sure that the location of the school and the community is stated, right? We want to make sure that who is present at this session, that we are stating that as well. We want to make sure that we mention the client we are servicing. Maybe I won't do all this. Let's just unhighlight it. We want to make sure that we mention the health conditions, the environmental conditions, and the safety of the client. We also want to mention when the next session is going to take place. We want to be able to identify any acquisition skills that were targeted during the session. And we also want to go over the target behaviors that occurred during the session, right? So let's just read over our session note, and then that will conclude the video. If you guys have any questions or concerns, please go ahead and drop a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe. So let's go ahead and just revise our session notes and make sure, I'm sure Grammarly already corrected most of everything. A lot of the times when you guys see the yellow underlining, they just want me to rephrase something, but a lot of the times they won't rephrase it. Honestly, I just use it for just for the basic grammar. A lot of the times we're doing our session notes last minute, even though we shouldn't. We should be doing them, right on time. But, if you're a full-time RBT, a full-time analyst, it could be very difficult. And I love Grammarly because I use it to dictate my notes, edit it later, and fix it, right? But I always have the same beginning and I always have the same end for all my session notes. So, session note goes, I met with SpongeBob at the agreed upon location with the caregiver at the school, Bikini Bottom Elementary. Upon arrival, I was greeted by Miss Krabs. SpongeBob was engaged in standing on his chair, engaging in out of seat behavior, which poses a safety concern. We have target behavior indicated here. However, there was no health concerns present during arrival of the session. I approached the client, verbally prompted them to have a seat. You can probably put prompted SpongeBob. So let's indicate, that's why it's good to read over your notes. SpongeBob to have a seat in their chair, in his chair, right? And asked him what we are working on. During the comprehension lesson, the client was instructed by the teacher to engage in peer interaction regarding the high frequency words of the week and come up with examples. SpongeBob did well with asking his peer what environment would they like to live in. This was the acquisition, a functional communication acquisition. The peer stated they would like to live in the cabins in cold weather. The client began to, so we can say SpongeBob, right? I'm typing this as if I'm teaching, which I am, but I want to give you guys a very clear example. So SpongeBob began to stem in the manner, because we want to define in what manner is he stemming. Stimming is so broad. Clients can stim by humming or foot tapping, pencil tapping, biting nails. There's so many different ways that a client can stim, but we want to identify in what manner SpongeBob is stimming. So SpongeBob began to stim in a manner of rocking back and forth in his seat and gazing away from his peer. No response to peer. Client's attention was obtained with physical gesture in the manner of tapping on his shoulders, and he was asked, what does he think about living in the cold weather? SpongeBob states, "Brr, it's cold." So even though he did not answer clearly the question, it might not be a great time. The lesson might be concluding by the teacher. It may not be a good time to create a behavior, right? By telling him, no, not really, right? A lot of our clients don't like to be told that they're incorrect or they responded incorrectly. So that's why I did not go any further with this functional communication. We paused here, and this will probably be a goal that will be for a home session or with the caregivers. So ask the client what environment the peer stated they wanted to live in. And then obviously the session would continue, but for the purpose of just providing you with an example of a session note, we would conclude with stating we are scheduled to meet with the client on Wednesday, July 24th, 2024 for continuation of implementation of the behavioral plan set forth by the behavioral analyst. And we are done. So this, again, guys, this is an example of a session note. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Again, as mentioned, go ahead and drop a comment if you have any input or anything extra, or maybe you want to learn how to maybe graph data, right? Leave me a comment on what other things or tutorials I can create for you on this ABA channel. I am here to help as much. This is not a standalone field. You are supported. I am here to guide you through every step, through becoming an RBT, to transitioning into a BCBA, to being as proficient and great. Remember, we serve a very diverse population, and self-care starts with us making sure that we have the tools and the necessary skills to be a great provider to our clients and our families. So stay tuned, stay subscribed, and have a great evening. And don't forget, tons and tons of material will be on this channel.